Well, joining us now is Bob Ray, until recently Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, joining us today as a private citizen. Mr. Ray, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Michael. Good to join you.
Listen, Mr. Trump, in this recently released national security strategy, he does make a departure from generations of post-World War II U.S. leaders, more concerned about economic outcomes than principles like democracy. How problematic is that?
I think it's very problematic, but I also think it's not exactly new in the sense that we've been living with this since January 6th, and we've been living with the consequences of it as it relates, obviously, with our trade relationship. But certainly in multilateral places like the UN and NATO, we've all noticed a dramatic shift in the American position. This really lays out the ideological foundations of this position and the ways in which it will be carried out in different parts of the world. And it poses enormous challenges for us, but it poses enormous challenges for Ukraine, for Taiwan, for many different parts of the world where it's clear that the American position substantively and rhetorically has changed a great deal.
Changed a great deal, and as you say, that will have a profound impact on countries like Canada. And there is one part of the strategy that reads as follows. It says, "We want other nations to see us as their partner of first choice, and we will, through various means, discourage their collaboration with others." How concerning should that line be for Canadian decision makers when this country is thinking, of strengthening military ties with Europe, perhaps purchasing the Gripen from Sweden, submarines from Germany or South Korea, and yet here clearly is a line that says they will discourage collaboration with others?
Well, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it's from one point of view, they're saying we're pretty much abandoning you, but at the same time, we're going to stop you from having relations with anybody else. I mean, it does make life. I mean, there are inconsistencies in the document. There's rhetoric, which, you say, well, that's just rhetoric. But you also have to understand that there's an attitude, there's a mindset that's reflected in the document that's very troubling, because it's really a way of saying we don't want to take. We don't want to look out for you any longer the way that we used to. We don't want to have the same kind of strong relationships that are based on friendship and long-term partnerships that we've had over many, many, many decades. We're going to forget about all that. We're only going to be interested in what's in our self-interest, what advances our interests as opposed to anyone else's. Oh, by the way, including yours. But we don't want you to have very good relations with anybody else because we're the best partners you could possibly have. I mean, there is a problem with that mindset. I think anybody who analyzes the document will say, if you're not a member of the Trump support team, you got a problem, and that's something I think as an independent, sovereign country, which Canada is and will continue to be, any self-respecting Canadian government has to make very clear what we think is reasonable and what we think goes beyond what's reasonable. And it does make all of our lives more complicated, but that's not what for Donald Trump. That's not the issue. This is about the interests that he has and his family and others have about how they advance their own self-interest in the world, and the rest of us had better just go along with it, or else there's going to be trouble, which is not a particularly pleasant way to think about how our future could unfold.
Mm-hmm. But how much of a pushback can this country make? Given the geographic proximity of Canada with the United States, the difference in size of our two countries and economies, the fact that Canada will always have to trade with the United States because we are neighbors, how much choice do we really have or leeway do we have to kind of counter this idea of Canada, I guess, as a vassal state to the United States?
Well, I don't think the vassal state option is a real option for Canada. It's never been how we have seen ourselves, and frankly, how Americans have seen us. And I think when I don't particularly want to throw fuel on this particular rhetorical fire. But I do think the reason that I put out my Substack was to say, wake up, Canadians. We need to understand what we're dealing with here and the kind of excesses that this rhetoric can give rise to. My firm view is that what America is saying is not actually in America's best interests. And that if you want to put anything first, you have to put others up there as well. You can't just be for yourself, you have to be for others as well. We were taught this as sort of basic rules of moral behavior in kindergarten. So it's important for us to keep on insisting that the pure pursuit of self-interest at the expense of everyone else, where every transaction redounds only to the benefit of the most powerful, is not a sensible way to proceed, because it ignores the self-interest of everyone else and the fact that others are going to have interests as well that have to be reconciled. That's what diplomacy is. That's what serious politics is. And so there is a quality to this document where you really have to say, well, yeah, but let's get real here about how this is going to get done.
Okay, you say let's get real about this, but there is right now we see countries around the world expressing concerns about where the United States is going, but at the same time laying praise on the U.S. president, giving him made-up peace prizes, giving him awards and gifts. You know, how much is the world already buying into this?
Well, I mean, I'm going back to some basic moral lessons. It doesn't really matter what everybody else does. It matters what you do. And we have to stand by certain principles, and we have to protect our own interests. And I don't think that means, going on, sort of passionate cartoon attacks on anyone individual. But I do think it means saying seriously to people, come on, we all have things in common here. It's not in anyone's interest to advance a set of policies which will create a lot of chaos and disruption and hurt in the world. Abandoning Ukraine is not a good idea. It's not in anyone's interest to do that. It's not in the interest of the Western alliance. Saying, as they say in this document, we're going to support not just governments that support us, but we're going to support political parties that support us that may be in opposition to the current government of any other country. So this is an appeal directly to a populist right-wing movement around the world to say, we'll support you. And then they say, well, but we are the most trustworthy and honest and transparent economy in the world, so you've really got no choice but to deal with us because we're the best. And you say, well, if you're the best, why would you be trying to undermine every elected government in Europe? I mean, what would be the conceivable interest in doing that? Why would you continue to chatter on about Greenland? Why would you continue to talk about 51st state? These things which undermine the democratic and political integrity of your fellow countries. So there's a need for us to recognize that the roots of adventurism are in this document, and the justification for it is there. But we have to be pushing back and saying, wait a minute here. There are common interests which we all have, which won't succeed if you keep pursuing things in the way in which you're pursuing them. And I know this isn't popular. I know that governments often don't like various unelected individuals like myself saying these things, but we have to say them because sometimes governments can't always say them out loud, and any citizen has to say these things because they are so damaging to any sense of trust, any sense of goodwill, any sense of working together, all the values that I think are common to a lot of the feelings that Canadians have across different political parties. And I think it's time that we started talking in that way so people understand why we're having this challenge.
But does it make sense to continue this dialogue with the United States, or does Canada need to turn to Europe, as has been suggested, to work closer on perhaps other issues that no longer interest this U.S. president?
Well, I think there are a number of countries around the world which believe in trading openly and fairly, which believe in human rights and believe in the rule of law and want to build institutions and ways of doing business that allow these things to happen. And I think we as Canadians need to work with all those countries. Many of them are in Europe, many of them are in Latin America, many of them are in Asia, many of them are in Africa. They're not confined to any one continent. And I think, frankly, what our prime minister has been doing has been to say, we as Canadians have to talk to everybody. We have to engage with countries around the world, and we have to do as much as we can to support the institutions and the values that we have, because that's in our interests. And even, I would argue, it's even in the interests of superpowers. It's not in the interests of the three so-called superpowers, the United States, China, and Russia, to behave in a way that threatens the peace and security of the world and which threatens the lives and the well-being of millions of people. That's not in their interest. It's not in our interests. It's certainly not in the interest of those people who are dying because of Russian expansionism, because of Chinese expansionism, and various other forms of reckless behavior. And we have to deal with the question of reckless behavior by our closest neighbor. This document will give rise to a lot of consequences that will have serious impact on the well-being of many, many people around the world.
Bob Ray, always appreciate the time. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you, Michael. Good to talk to you.